Hello, everybody. Thank you for watching this series where I dive deep into the candidates running for local office in Gilbert, Arizona. Today, I have Lynne King-Smith, who is a mayoral candidate, and she's with me today to answer some questions. The town of Gilbert is holding elections to appoint a mayor. There are 3 candidates and 2 town council members for a 4-year term and 1 council member for a 2-year term. The primary election is going to be on Tuesday, August 4th, with the general election on Tuesday, November 3rd. Lynne King-Smith, who is with me today, is a business owner, co-founder, and CEO of eTix and Thriving Co-working for Women. Thank you for allowing me to interview you today. I want to start by having you explain a little bit of your platform.
Fantastic. Thanks for having me. I think this is an amazing way to get to know voters and for voters to get to know candidates. So my platform, when I started running, it really was about bringing a new level of leadership to the town council and to mayorship. I felt that we're at a critical time for Gilbert. We've had some really good years where everything was focused on planning and growth and planning and growth and planning and growth. We've done a really good job at that. Look around Gilbert. No one talks about very often any complaints that they have with the quality of life here. Very few. But we are almost reaching build out. In the next 10 to 15 years, my approach is more about who are we as a community and what kind of people are we, and how can we make sure that we're building a Gilbert that really is for everybody. And that brings along a lot of things with it, but there's a lot more to building a good town and a good city than just roads and buildings and all of those types of things. So I'm very much in support of the general plan that's coming up for that same election on August the 4th. And that's, we'll have to pass the town approval. The people have had a lot of investment in that, and there's been a lot of open meetings. And the general plan calls for us to really, what does it look like for us to be a city of the future? Even though we're a town in Gilbert, we talk about city of the future because that's a nationwide movement where folks are really looking ahead at 10 and 15 and 20 years down the road to have the infrastructure in place that we need to serve what our needs were going to be like in that time. So part of my platform really is about making sure in all areas, whether that's public safety, that we've got, the victims unit that the Chief Solberg is right now putting before the council and putting into the budget so that we don't have a victims unit in Gilbert. Can't be a town this size and operate efficiently without that. So those are some of the things, we need to make room for. We have to increase our police presence, even though we're one of the safest cities in the US and in Arizona, we have to continue to expand that. So it's a very big supporter of getting the training facility for our own fire and police. Again, that's a growth thing. We didn't used to have that. It's not open yet, but we have to send our trainees off to Mesa or other cities and towns to train and then bring them back here. So these are the kind of things that have to happen for us to continue to deliver the same quality of life. So that's really been key for me, is moving forward. But I will tell you, Danielle, that when I'm calling voters, in the first few weeks of my calls, everybody wanted to talk about like why are we building so many apartments, or what's going on with the streets bond and things like that. Are there too many restaurants downtown? But in the last 2 to 3 weeks, 100% of the folks I'm talking to want to talk only about the COVID virus, how it's affecting them, how it's affecting their families, and how are we going to recover. That has been 100% of the conversations that I've had. So a big part of my platform is bringing my leadership in and having a plan to help Gilbert recover. I would take office in 2021 if elected, and we are not going to be over with this. We may be back at work, but the economic recovery is going to take a long time, and we don't know. There may be an outbreak again in the fall. We hope not, but it's an unknown, and we still will not have a vaccine most likely by that time. So the COVID virus and that economic recovery there for small business is huge. So I did write a plan called Gilbert Together, pinging on the Arizona Together hashtag that they're using. and it touches all different areas. It's not a plan where I'm dictating this is how it's going to happen, but these are the things that we need to think about. So that plan's on my website, which is lynnekingsmith.com. I would love for folks to take a look at that. We talk about mental health. We talk about all the different types of recovery that we need to have, not just opening doors, walking in and going, everything's fine now because our businesses are open, because we have some lasting effects to deal with. So, and I will say for young voters, I have three daughters. They are 33, 31, and 27. Just today, the third one was furloughed, meaning that all three of my daughters, who are educated with master's and bachelor's degrees in good jobs, all three of them have now been furloughed because of the COVID virus. They are all three living on unemployment benefits and relying on that additional money from the federal government, or they wouldn't be able to pay their mortgages because all three of them are homeowners. So this is hitting young voters hard. And you've got a lot of restaurant workers that are out of work. And so a lot of these things that are happening in COVID are going to really be hitting the younger voters, the 18 to 25 and even up to 30. This seems to be, I mean, my kids are 3 for 3. So this is really very real and comes home for me.
The COVID-19 situation that is ongoing and will continue to be ongoing is definitely on everyone's mind. And I know a lot of people want to take a step back and listen to issues that are not COVID-19 related. So I don't want to focus too much on that, because I think our
Mhm.
news is fully covering that to its fullest extent. Uh,
Mhm.
but as mayor, what are some things that you will push for? I do know you have that Gilbert Together plan, and I will link to it down below.
Yeah.
That it talks about business environment, restaurant and bars, mental and physical health, and community response. But as mayor, what will you strive to do to help the community and also businesses as well?
Right. I'll start with businesses because businesses employ people. So you can't really separate the two. We have to help our businesses. We've really done everything we can, but historically, Gilbert does not get the kind of aid that's there in monetary aid for businesses. All right. So Mesa's getting $90 million to help their businesses. The city of Phoenix's grant, and this is federal money and state money. The city of Phoenix will get a chunk larger than that. But cities and towns under 500,000 are not receiving monetary aid like that. And Gilbert doesn't sit around on a bunch of money that we're sitting here going, well, when something really bad happens, we'll be able to give grants out to our businesses. So what we have to do is be strategic about making sure our business owners know how to get the funds that are available, whether they're state funds or federal funds. There are both. We can do some work in the way of grants and things like that. And I know we're looking at that, but this is going to be ongoing. There's going to be multiple packages passed to help the economy. And what I saw in the first package, Danielle, was that a lot of the really small and micro businesses didn't get that aid. And a lot of folks were upset, they were angry. And some of the reason is because when you're a small micro business and you have to fill out an application, it's overwhelming. It's something that you might not have your finances all ready to go at the click of a button. So the bigger companies are very quick to be able to do that, right? So they got in there, their CFOs and their accountants were able to get those applications done. They had all their paperwork ready, right? A small business owner is going, I don't have a full-time bookkeeper. I got to go in my office. I got to look up where I'm even going for this and what papers do I need and where are my 2019 tax returns? I know how it is. And that, by and large, was one of the reasons the small micro businesses didn't get the aid. Also, you talk to the banks, some of them just didn't fill out the paperwork right. You check the wrong box here or there. It is government paperwork and it's completely overwhelming. So, what we have to do as we move ahead is make sure we get really good information out to our small and micro businesses. Our digital team helps do that, but that has to be a huge priority. I even talked about, could we not set up like some sort of a temporary center where if you're a business owner and you're like, I need to get a hold of that aid, but I don't know how to fill out the forms right. I don't know what I need. You could come in and sit with someone who's done it, right? Folks could volunteer to staff that. We really just need the space to do it and set up something where we've then got these actual wonderful resources and tangible hands-on help for people that need it. We've got to get the money to our community because when our business is open, then our residents are back to work again, and so they can't open without the funds to help do it. So really getting that funding and getting that information quickly. Governments move slowly, business moves fast. So being able to connect the business community, all those resources with our town so we can get the information to residents, that's really, really key. So that's really the business side of it. I think the other side is making sure that our residents have their physical needs met and that we're doing everything we can to make sure our food banks are stocked, that we're letting the people know how they can help out. We're working with landlords so that folks aren't, we don't want folks getting kicked out and turn out onto the streets during this time. We're making sure folks have the right information to get all their unemployment benefits so that they can keep paying their rents. So it's a very community-wide effort. And then I think the third one really is the mental health aspect of this. The anxiety that a lot of people wake up with on a normal time right now in today's day and age, and Danielle, I'm sure you know in your age group, it's pretty high. And sometimes just getting through a normal day, folks wake up with some anxiety. I'm a pretty emotionally strong person. I wake up now a lot of mornings and I just feel nervous. And there's nothing specific there, but I just have this weird kind of a nervous feeling inside. And I know that it's because I don't know what's ahead for my city and my family and my state, my country. It feels really different. It's never done a pandemic before. We don't know what it looks like. It's not like a flood where it comes and then it's over and then you recover. It just has so many unknowns. So when you think of someone who already has anxiety built in and they're waking up every morning, that's something that we really are going to need to be willing to address as a community. And how can we, again, tap into the best resources possible, even if it's our nonprofits, we're pulling people together to say, how can we get folks the help that they need to make sure we are fully functioning and really bouncing back in a great way. So those are some ways. It's gonna take new thinking. The way we've done government before, it's not gonna work, And on top of that, our own town government's gonna have to be making some cuts, some deep, some tough choices, and the budget adjusts for that. But we have to be creative. We've never faced a pandemic before, so we have to be open to things we've never even talked about before here in the town of Gilbert to make sure that we can help all of our residents thrive and come back from this in a strong way.
So, on the note of communication, since that is a theme that was very important to you in both of those, whether that's business and having businesses and the government communicate more in their needs, and having people communicate more to their needs to what the government response should be. I definitely see in Gilbert that there is a disparity between specifically young people involved in local government, but overall, for example, the Gilbert Plan that's out and that's going to be voted on during the primary elections in August has 77 different policy positions. Now, they're not specific, like full-on legislation. They're just policy ideals that we're going to try to meet within the next couple of years. And I like to think that I'm a person who is pretty well informed in what's going on, but I actually had to go in and find it, and it took quite a bit of digging into finding where the exact plan is, let alone what the plan fully entails. Mm-hmm. So, on communication as a whole, regardless of COVID-19, or what steps do you plan on to take as mayor to enhance communication with everybody, but also with people like me who are going to be new voters who have no idea when they look at the ballot, what is this Gilbert Plan? And then they see 77 policies.
It's a very pretty plan, it came, but it came from folks who are very, very much sitting up here on the planning level, right? And how they think. But yeah, they did do a graphically pleasing, very nice plan. Um, there's a lot of ways to attack that, and that's something that really looking at the younger voters and having making sure that they're included in some of those community forums. I think that's the start, right? Because if they were involved in the input more, and certainly there's opportunity, but we sort of throw that out there and say, hey, if you want to come, come. But I think specifically recruiting and working with leaders in your age group, like you, Danielle, to say, okay, Danielle, we're going to put the rubber to the road now. We're going to host something where we're going to be able to give input for 18 to 32-year-olds or whatever it is, to come in and get that input. That's a different demographic. Can you help us pull those folks together, so that there's a familiarity and they've been working with that? And how do we communicate that out there? I don't know if the town has a TikTok channel yet, but it might be it may be we need to change our platforms too. We have one of the best digital teams in the entire state, if not the nation. And so they do good work. So the resources are right there. And if it's just a matter of tapping into and making sure that the information we're putting out really works for everyone, not just our target age of in the 30s, but we realize 18-year-olds vote now. And we've got some good connections there. I think we just build on that. I don't know. I saw someone when I think it was the Mueller report that came out. They were like, everybody needs to read the Mueller report. It was like this thick, right? And something like, I don't know, 3% of Americans read this thing. And it was our tax dollars that created it. Then I saw this lady, and she created not a cartoon version, but kind of the Mueller report. And she basically took and added drawings and got you through it in a much smaller format with more pictures. I mean, those are the kind of things we can do to say, hey, here's a condensed version of the plan, right? You want to read the whole thing? Here it is. But here's something. It's graphically easy to look at, easy to get out there. Those are the types of conversations that we can have around making sure. And we've got a youth advisory council. I will want to take that and build on that, the mayor's youth advisory council, and to make sure that there are folks working with the mayor and finding out what town government is like and giving us feedback from what the needs of that particular group are. So I think that could tie in as well.
Yeah. And it's definitely not to say that people my age aren't willing to read all 77. I definitely did. But we might not just have the time or the accessibility, because as I did mention, I had to do a little bit of digging onto the Gilbert website to find exactly where that really beautifully put
very nice
was. On the same note, there were pictures in there, and they're all pretty and they all look great and the graphs are awesome. But then you have some images of community forums, and they're not as community as I would have hoped it would be. And what I mean by that is that there weren't as many people there, and it didn't look as diverse and as Gilbert really is. So I think also expanding on the accessibility of these community forums.
Right, there's some work to do there, and sometimes we have to go too, right? We're asking maybe voters to come to us. Sometimes we have to go to different areas of town and set them up in different settings so that it's a comfortable atmosphere to come into.
On the note of new recent developments happening in Gilbert, there was a recent vote to have an increased tax levy occur, and a lot of different things are happening with the budget. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on that, because it is something that was quite controversial. And regardless of it, that is going to be our budget moving forward. So what will you do as mayor to adhere to the budget and move it in the direction that you want to move it towards?
Yeah, well, on the tax, on the levy, it's a matter of two sides of that argument that have been going on for a long time, talking about the same thing with different verbiage, right? So what that does to voters is just make them throw up their hands and go, who's telling me the truth, right? I have several people on town council telling me you're raising the taxes. And then I have the mayor even speaking up and going, no, it's actually not a tax increase. So when I'm sitting there as a voter, I'm going, why are you not even able to express this in the same terms to me, right? So I think part of it is we're not always going to agree. When seven of us walk into the dais, I hope we don't always agree. I want different opinions in there. I think that's really important in a healthy council. But I do think we need to step back and not use government terminology for things that makes most people just go, what I'm talking about. And then it allows other folks to take and run with it and go, hey, they're raising your taxes, right? Um, I think the most helpful thing is to say, all right, if you're a homeowner in Gilbert right now, um, you're you're going to pay a levy that the voters did pass. You're going to pay a levy that's based on the value of your home. So first of all, if you're a renter, you're not paying anything more. So let's tell people that, right? Let's not tell everybody they're raising your taxes in Gilbert. Now you're only talking to homeowners. Are you a homeowner yet, Danielle?
No, but my parents are.
Okay, so you're not a homeowner, so your taxes, you're not going to pay more taxes next year. So let's be clear. Let's not be tricky to people, right? That's the first thing. Really, really clear. Secondly, the tax levy, as it was passed by the voters, right? So that's another thing. Folks said, okay, we feel these things are important. We're willing to put that in there. The third part is the rate is staying the same. So is that a tax increase or not? That's where the mayor was saying the rate's the same, it's not an increase. But the way the formula works with the county coming in and assessing the value of your house, that rate system has changed. And so some people, if your house value goes up, will pay more. What they didn't tell you is if your house value goes down, you'll pay less. All right. So it's a little presumptive to say Gilbert's raising your taxes when in essence it's based on home values, which can go like this. Okay. So let's just be clear with people. And then I don't know when I hear that as a voter, hey, is that $2,000 you're talking about a year? Or is it $200? Or is it $20? Right. So a lot of people just talk. Did you hear anybody talking about a dollar amount per year?
Nope.
I didn't either. Isn't that what most people think in terms of? If I go to my kids who are all millennials and I say, look, we need new streets, we need X, Y, and Z. Are you willing to have, if your house values go up, you're going to pay $5 more a month or $60 more a year, whatever. My kids would all say, yeah, that seems fair. I'm not going to notice that. If you come to them and you go, hey, do you know people tax a levy? And if your house goes up by the normal value, you're going to pay $2,000 more this year. Now they're listening and they care. So all of those things mean we have to be more clear with people. And I think if you break it down, don't talk about levies because no one knows what a levy is compared to a tax, compared to what is this? Is it an income tax? It's also blurry and it's just meant to inflame. There's no need for that. We don't need to be fighting over terms. I would have taken the average home value in Gilbert and I would have found out the formula on that average home. And I would have said, what are the projected rise in the value of that home? And I would have calculated that. And I would have said, Gilbert voters, you voted for the levy to take care of these things. If this is your home value and it goes up by this much, this is the dollar amount you'll pay. Our rate's the same, but the calculations are different because it's going to be based on the value of your house. So if your house doesn't change, your rate doesn't go up. So I like to give people information in a non-governmental foo-foo talk way. So we all talk in terms of all kinds of fancy terms up there on the dais and people don't understand. And then you get to throw out things where you're saying we're raising taxes. Let's not deceive people. All right. Yes, some folks will pay more if your value goes up and if you are a homeowner. Let's be honest and truthful about it. And let's make it really clear for people to digest. And then they can decide, I'm
I
okay
think,
with $20,
yeah, I think that's another fair point to say that would also make these meetings, these town meetings, more accessible to the public because they're not going to be afraid of not understanding
Mhm.
because you kind of
I love to talk to, yeah, I love it. It's, when I'm sitting, I like to digest information. I watch people, and that's one thing. I talk to the town staff about it now. I'm like, you guys know that you talk in you talk in a whole different language. And I'm not a politician. I've done board governance for years and I'm on international boards. So I understand how boards and governance works and staff and government. But um, I come out of the business world and we have acronyms as well, but I'm a pretty plain talker. And I think most people really appreciate not talking in terms where folks don't have any clue what you're talking about. And they just, I'm not going to go to that meeting. And, I will be very kind, but I talk to the staff now about, I'm like, you just used a word that I've learned what it is now, but no one else knows what that means outside of these walls. You're going to have to talk to people in real language. It doesn't make you look smart, it just makes them feel weird. And so that is a real key to communication and making sure that everybody understands. And then we don't really have to have these goofy fights. If you just put the facts out, you can let people decide if they think that's a tax increase or not. But give them the straight facts. They usually laugh when I tell them, they talk about rooftops, and rooftops are the number of homes that people own in a city, right? I said, rooftops for me and everybody else are rooftop bars. So you know,
And perfect segue to what I was going to ask you next. You did mention how prior to COVID-19, people were asking you about apartments and homes and all of that. And I kind of
right.
wanted to ask you about that. As a young person who is in college, I don't have to take out any loans, but loans and student debt are a big issue for people in my age demographic. And that has prevented people in my age group from becoming homeowners at all or becoming homeowners until very late in their lives. So, affordable housing is something that I know a lot of people in my age demographic are very interested in. And because Gilbert is a place where I've lived my entire life, I would love to see more people my age, be involved in Gilbert and, live in Gilbert and
Yes.
have those experiences. But when we have a whole entire generation prevented pretty much from becoming homeowners, how
Mhm.
does Gilbert address that? And how would you as mayor address this issue?
It's a critical issue. Again, it's not a short-term thing. It's a longer-term conversation. But what kind of town are we? We call ourselves a family town. But what kind of family town are we if we grow our kids up, we help them get away to college, and then they come back and they can't afford to live here? So they move to, I don't want to pick on any, they move to one of the neighboring towns. I'll leave it at that, right? But we're basically pushing everybody to the borders, right? Um, and even the rents, Danielle, as you know, are oftentimes, my kids became homeowners um, because the rents were too high and they didn't like that. So, um, talking about affordable housing, people, again, that's a term that people just think of it as being crime infested, horrible thing. And it really just means, do we really want to be a town where there's only a certain income level that is able to live here? And we really isolate our young people, even our college grads, when we do that. And so that's a conversation that we do need to have. And there's a lot of folks that may want apartments, even. And when we talk in those terms, where they may want to empty nest in an apartment. They may be professional people who lived in Gilbert and now they want to downsize. They don't want to take care of a yard anymore. So we are not a complete community unless we have housing that works for everyone that wants to work here. I mean, you have a lot of restaurant workers that can't afford to buy homes here, so they have to live in other towns, but they work here. And so there's just a lot of that we need to discuss and find, again, really cool creative ways to address those needs. And those that I never thought that would come up, and it keeps coming up in the conversations that I'm having with people. And when you put it in the context of people having to leave Gilbert that were raised here because they can't afford to live here, then I think it becomes real and really hits home for folks. And so I think it's a very, very important conversation to have.
Yeah. And on that line, we do have a rising poverty issue happening in Gilbert. It's not a lot, but I think rising poverty rates is something that we need to address before it becomes a problem. So, as mayor, what do you plan on doing to start addressing those issues?
First, I think the first step is you have to talk about them. We have a way here in Gilbert of sort of saying that everything is great and we love living here and we have this wonderful community and isn't it beautiful? And we tend to take some of the things that are not pleasant and shove them down or don't talk about them to the point a lot of folks don't know that there's poverty here. You know, there are children, a great number of children that classify. There's another word other than homeless, but if you live in a residence for like 3 months and that's your longest, it's transitional. It's a different level. So you don't have a permanent home. You're always moving. And there are a great amount of our school kids that fall into that category. And I'm telling you, if you talk to the police and the fire, they know there's poverty here. You know, they know that there is some drug use here. They know that everything is not as perfect as some of us like to make it look. So the start is having the conversation because I do believe we're a kind community. And I do believe if people are more aware that then um, they're going to be more willing to take the steps needed. I think COVID, a silver lining for COVID is in a bad way, there's going to be more people that fall into that poverty level because of COVID, even if it's temporary. So that the numbers are going to change greatly. And that the silver lining of that is that may force us to have that conversation that we haven't wanted to have up to this point. And again, I really believe in this community. I just think talking about these things is important, and we haven't wanted to in the past. But every community has folks at all different income levels and all different, and then it can change. You can be doing great and be a business owner and lose your business and find yourself on food stamps. So you just never know, where you're going to be at any point in life. And so I think having the conversations is step one, and finding out how we address those needs as a community is step two. And that's very much going to be on my mind um, as mayor.
So similarly, but a little different, I want to talk about jobs and job creation since that is a big thing.
Love that.
Big thing for you. I know it's one of your top priorities on your website, but also it's a big thing on the Gilbert Plan, and it's a big thing on everybody's minds right now because of COVID-19, because of massive job loss and unemployment happening. There's kind of two lines of thinking. Uh, COVID response, and then there's the post-COVID response.
Yeah.
And I don't like to separate them as much because they go hand in hand. And as you have said, and as I've said, this pandemic is going to be ongoing.
Mm.
So, what is job creation going to look like in Gilbert, and what would you, leading the town council, want to do when it comes to increasing jobs and increasing businesses in our community?
Mhm. Yeah, and I think you're going to have those on the council. There's always those who want less government involvement, and then there's those that are like, "What can we do to help?" And sometimes those two things collide a little bit. They're idealisms. I'm going to ask folks to come to the council and set the personal idealisms aside, especially in a pandemic, right? So we can all have these nice, lofty sets of beliefs that we think we hold very dearly as to what works. But I think a pandemic changes all the rules for that. And I think that's one thing we're going to learn is it becomes very different in that setting. But we have to look at things from a full community perspective. So if we help businesses, it helps individuals and it helps create jobs. So along those lines, I'm very much in favor of us increasing the industrial portion of within our town. And we've got land zoned for that. We have the room to do it. I know everyone, likes to talk about some of the big companies that we've brought in the last couple of years. Deloitte is the poster child for that, and that's going to end up bringing us about 3,000 jobs before it's said and done. So we can do that again. We did that once. We can do that again, and we have the space to do that. So that's something that I will very much encourage and support because, again, for young people who want to start their life here in Gilbert, working in the town of Gilbert is helpful. You know, to not have to have a commute to Chandler or Mesa, or God forbid, Phoenix or Tempe, just because it's so far, right? We want to keep folks as close here. So there's a lot of interchange between Chandler and Gilbert. But if you live in the the northeast part of Gilbert and you're commuting to Chandler, that's a hefty haul as well. We have big landmass here. So we have room to have more industrial work come in. I think we need to look for our developers and work with them to create spaces a little bit more like what we're doing with the epicenter here in Agritopia. And that's a multi-use project. So that project brings in places for people to work because it's got retail and restaurants. You've got jobs there at that level. There most likely be office space there. So you'll have the opportunity for office jobs there if anybody ever goes back to work in an office. and and then and then also living, right? And so those types of projects are very dense and are very good for the town because they bring different types of tax revenues in for the town and different types of recurring revenues. But at the same time, it gives it's a good use of land because now we're creating jobs in that same setting. We're not just plunking apartments down, but we're adding retail and office to those types of things. So I think we're going to see more of that in our next 10 to 15 years, so that we've really got places for all types of folks to live, but also to be able to work here in Gilbert. Mm-hmm. And then as it relates to COVID, there is going to be money opportunity. There are grants already coming forward in each of the aid packages, and I'm going to be on our team like something to get that out and make sure we get our portion and get that distributed to our Gilbert businesses in the form of grants and loans as we need to and as those funds become available, because that's immediate help for our businesses to get back on their feet again. And we're already doing that.
Yeah, so that was my last COVID-ish related question, but I'm going to segue with a little bit more. So
Okay.
apologies to anyone who watches this who is saying, Danny, we told you we don't want any more COVID-19, but
sorry.
Sorry, but it's important. We need to talk about it.
It kind of affects every other subject. So it's, yeah. But you're doing well at, talking about other things as well.
I'm trying my best. But with COVID-19, it really shows us that we are not prepared for a pandemic from a government level, from a worldwide level, all the way down to local. And that is only going to be exacerbated with the issue of climate change, which is something that I cannot stress enough to anybody. It is going to affect us, and
it is your generation's issue. It is.
Yeah, if we have another pandemic, climate change is going to make things so much worse. So I want to ask you about what is your vision for addressing climate change in the town of Gilbert? Do you have a plan for negative carbon emission or at least zero carbon emission for Gilbert?
That would be incredible. And I will say also that it's not if we have another pandemic, it's when. This is definitely our practice run, and I'm not gloom and doom, but there's just no reason to believe that this is one and done. And so we get another chance to do it better next time and to be more prepared for it. It's not an if, it's a when. So wow, zero carbon emissions in Gilbert would be a dream. I think that would be a 25-year plan or something like that. It takes a long time. I will tell you that I'm very encouraged by a lot of the things that are in the city of the future that speak to that. And I will say, can we do that and do this? Let's say that this is a good initiative. That's great. We thought in 2020 when we made that plan that was good enough, but now in 2023, this is what we're seeing with emissions. So let's up the ante and let's push it farther ahead than what we even planned for. And I think having the right folks in place, I'm not sure staff wise off the top of my head if there is in particular. There are environmental services folks for sure, and that's a big part of our staff. But I would really want to acclimate myself to the work that those folks are doing, and continue to talk to Patrick Banger, the town manager, and find out, what do we see for that and what would it look like? I know that, we have in place that driverless cars will perhaps be one of the first cities in the valley to have that and to do it really right and to have distribution centers and to the infrastructure networks going in for those things. And those do really help to reduce our emissions, to make us more of a walking friendly town, to increase our trails, those types of things. Those are some long term um, goals that we can have. We've already got some really cool stuff in place here with our preserve, our riparian preserve. We've got, the SRP plant was such a big deal when that came in. And so some things that we're doing with energy here in Gilbert are already pretty great. But I'm very interested in moving that ahead. And again, just let's not limit ourselves to these narrow things that we think. Let's have really big conversations. Let's study what other folks are doing and see what can we bring here and what makes sense for Gilbert. And we have to do all of that by being responsible fiscally. But the answer is not always that all this stuff costs more money, because when you look at long term, oftentimes you're going to be able to save. And you just have to look at it on a holistic viewpoint. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, I would love to see Gilbert be green, fully green. One day, hopefully that is sooner rather than later. On the Gilbert Plan, it talks about climate change towards the end. It's actually policy 73 out of 77. I know they're not in any particular order. They are ordered by category. It does feel like it's a little bit of an afterthought. How can people, everyday people, and also how can local government bring that into fruition, bring it more into every aspect of our lives? Because it's not just the issue of climate change isn't okay, we're going to put on solar panels, but it's more than just energy solutions. It's public transportation, it's waste management, it's in everybody's lives. How can we bring this forward?
It's all, again, it's about conversations. So that's where everything starts, right? We can just leave things buried and not talk about them and nothing happens. So having a visionary leader as a mayor means bringing some of that stuff forward, right? And I really feel we have a visionary town manager, Patrick Banger, as I've mentioned him before. So the town manager and the mayor have a really unique and important relationship, because the mayor is obviously the elected official that carries the vision for where the town goes. But the town manager's job is to, they create the plan under him, and it's passed by the town council. And so that relationship is really key. And those are the things that, having a mayor who's a visionary person, I can just continue to bring those up in every conversation I'm having. When we're talking about things that we don't think about as being energy, I can bring that back. I can say, let's talk about this every time this comes up. And that's kind of the way you have to do to bring something from number 73 up to number 5, is to just keep talking about it. Yeah. And, I've done that sort of in my life's work with women's issues. And there's a lot of people that are like, why are you so enthused about helping women in business? And it's like, why? I don't know why. I just know my own experience is that people don't talk about it enough. They don't realize enough that there's skilled women who for many reasons are not going into executive level positions, and they have the skills to do it. So the only way I know is to talk about it. So, I go to conferences after conferences in my work, and over the past years. And every time I do, I'm asked to sit on a council. Instead of talking about technology, I'm bringing up women's issues in that category. So it's that same type of thing. That's what visionary leadership does. It just won't let it drop, and it says, look, we have a vision. That's a great plan, but what about this? And my husband has a phrase he uses, and what if used to be sort of a down phrase, like a worry phrase, like, oh, what if this happens or what if that happens? One that we picked up and we keep using is what if up. So we just ask the question, like, when we're saying, well, we can't do this because it costs too much, or there's not, well, what if up? What if up on? What if we could do better on affordable housing? What if we could do better on making Gilbert more green and having, loftier goals that we can reach and put in place that are going to save us all money, uh, and and make our life cleaner and have cleaner air, so what if up is kind of, but it's really just a matter of a visionary leader that says, look, we're going to keep talking about this, guys, and we're going to keep bringing it up, and it's not a one and done, and we're going to see that permeate everything we do. So whatever that issue is that happens to need to be talked about, that's my approach for just continuing to bring up those conversations.
What if up? I like that a lot.
You like that? You can borrow it. I didn't make it up.
We've been talking for quite some time. So I want to thank you for taking this time to speak with me. I know this isn't going to be the last time we talk because
Right.
I'm so interested in this, and I know other people are wanting to hear from you. So
Wonderful.
um, I do want to mention that you actually every Thursday have a time
Oh,
where
true.
um, do Zoom lunch with Lynn's. It's a
Mhm.
great way for the community to get to know you even more and ask their own questions. But on top of that, do you have any final things you'd like to say before we?
Or if I'm able to make the plug and say, I am really interested in forming a coalition of younger voters. And so we've actually hired our newest staffer is a college student, Jesse, and he's just fresh off of Corey Wood's campaign in Tempe. And he is amazing. And so, if any of your listeners would like to volunteer and be part of that coalition, it's just Jesse, Jesse, at LynneKingsmith.com. And you can email him and say, I'd love to help. And that would be great. He's got phone number for texting, and I don't have it handy. So I wish we could put that up. You
If you
can,
want to send that to me, I can put it
I
in.
do. Yeah, absolutely. Because I know texting is easier and faster than opening email and seeing all these things that just bring you stress. So, but that would be great. We're looking to really build a coalition of folks that want to get involved in government here and in the campaign. We're on all the social channels. So whether you like Insta, Twitter, Facebook, it's LKS for Gilbert, FOR. And we just really want to hear from you. There's also a link on our website. It's lynnekingsmith.com. And there's a link there where you can just sign up that you supported and that you like the campaign. That is, if you do. So I understand. But we would just love to have as many folks. And I'm very proud, Danielle, that my very first donor was, I think he's about 19 years old. I think I told you that. And it was so exciting because we're not even making a plug, right now for people to, do big donations or anything like that. But he was doing his research as smart young people do, and he was found out that Mayor Jen was resigning, and he was like, wow, what are we going to do, and he liked her as a mayor, and so he did his research. He came up on our site, and he ended up supporting the campaign and giving our very first donation. I gave him a call, and it was so exciting. So I really do get excited by that, and would love to have as many folks in this coalition involved. And whether or not we win, I think that the results of that, we will keep something going so that we can keep younger voters activated and inspired here in our town. That's my heart.
Well, thank you so much. That was Lynne King Smith. She is running for mayor here in Gilbert, Arizona. So
Running
if
for
you
mayor.
if you want to find out more information about her and any of the links that she mentioned and the phone number as well, for some of her staffers, that's all going to be down in the description below. If you want to know more about me and my efforts to increase youth civic engagement, those links are down below too. But more
Cool.
importantly, the link to register to vote is there too for
Yes,
Maricopa.
please.
Register, get your voice heard. Regardless of who you support, it is so, so important that you fill out that ballot, you send it in on time, early voting, mail in, so we're all safe. And the primary, just for
Yes, please.
one more notification before we all go, it's August 4th, and
August
the
4th.
general election is November 3rd.
And the
Vote.
mayor race could be decided on August 4th.
It
So if
could be
anyone gets 50% plus one vote, so it's less of a primary from that perspective. It is a primary, but it could be determined. So it's a very important day.
similarly with the council member running for the two-term election, that pretty much might be decided on that election. So it is a very
Very
important.
possible.
The general election is important, but primaries are super duper important too.
Critical, and the general plan will be there at August 4 as
Yes,
well. So
yes. And as I mentioned in my last video, I hopefully plan to do a deeper dive into what the general plan looks like. Try to
oh,
try to do my own version of how to make it a little bit more accessible.
okay, good.
We'll
Awesome,
see.
Danielle.
Thank you so much, everybody.